In this lesson, we are going to read the short story, Secrets Are Hard to Keep. One day, as Neil was strolling down the road, he spotted a snake trapped between two rocks. Neil hated seeing a creature in trouble. He pulled apart the rocks carefully so that the snake could slither away. "I owe you a reward," said the snake. "Hold out your hand." And the snake dropped a snake tooth into his palm. "Wear it around your neck," he whispered, "and you'll understand everything that animals say. But if you reveal your secret, the charm won't work anymore." "I won't tell anyone," Neil assured him. The snake flicked out his tongue. "Beware, secrets are hard to keep, my friend." That night, lying on the cot next to his wife, Neil heard mice scurrying across the floor. "We will find any inheritbread in this hut, I wonder," one mouse squeaked to another. And then inheritbread would be a type of flatbread. Now, at this point in the story, we can assume that it is a fable or kind of like a fairy tale, definitely fantasy type genre. So the genre of your story is just the type of story it is. So if you ever watch Netflix or YouTube, you'll see comedy or children's movies or scary movies or documentaries. Documentaries would be true stories. So this would be what we would call the genre a fable, where we have a talking animal. Or it could also be a folk tale. So a folk tale would be a story that is told by word of mouth and would be a really, really old story that people would tell like 1,000 or more years ago. It could also be a folk tale, but it doesn't tell us, obviously. And then we would want to say, so we have Neil here. Neil is going to be our story's main character. We could also call Neil the protagonist. So the protagonist of a story is the main character that has a problem. And now we know that Neil's problem, well, at first, it was a snake in trouble. But now the snake gives him a charm, right? A tooth. His tooth is a charm. And tells him he can wear it around his neck and he'll understand everything that animals say, which would actually be pretty cool, you could say. But if he tells anyone the secret, it won't work. So as of now, Neil doesn't really have a conflict because he saved the snake and the snake gave him this charm or a snake tooth so he can listen to animals talk. So now we have to wait and see if we can find Neil's conflict or problem. So this would be the mice. Neil heard the mice scurrying across the floor. Will we find any inheritbread in this hut, I wonder? One mouse squeaked at another. Neil sat up in surprise, clasping his charm. He could understand the mouse's squeaking. "The people in this house never put food away correctly," replied the second mouse. "We are going to feast like emperors." Neil couldn't help laughing. The poor mice would be disappointed. He and his wife had eaten everything. "Why are you laughing, Neil?" asked his wife. "I can't tell you," replied Neil, remembering the snake's warning. In the morning, a milk seller knocked on the door of the hut. Wait, and an emperor would be like a king or a ruler. So here we are getting the sense of Neil's conflict. He is not very good, maybe, at keeping the secret, but he's kept the secret here. He said, "I can't tell you." All right, so this could be his conflict. Neil versus himself because he's struggling to keep this conflict, or he's struggling to keep this secret. "I hope that these people aren't foolish enough to part with their money." Neil heard one cat say to another, "The master has watered down the milk." Neil laughed out loud again. Being able to understand animals seemed to have a lot of benefits. "What's the big joke?" asked his wife. "Why can't you tell me?" "I have my reasons," answered Neil, and he refused to say anything else. Later that afternoon, Neil's old aunt came to visit, riding on her big cow. "It's not fair, that woman riding on me in this heat," the cow complained to a stray cat. "She's heavier than a cartload of mangoes." Neil tried hard not to giggle. Aunt Sora would be furious if she found out what the big cow was saying about her. "I've had enough," fumed his wife. "If you don't tell me what's making you laugh, I'm going home to my parents." Ooh, all right. This, we could say, is the climax of the story, where Neil is now going to have to make a decision. He's either going to have to tell his wife, or she's going to leave him. And that, you could say, is a turning point for Neil. All right, we'll see. Neil didn't want to lose his wife. He loved her too much. He told her his secret immediately. But his wife didn't believe him. Neil gave her the charm. "Here, you try it." But the charm had stopped working. Neil's wife couldn't understand what the animals were saying. And when he put the charm around his neck, neither could Neil. The fun was over. A few days later, Neil was resting under the mango tree when the snake slithered past. "I see that you have revealed your secret, my friend." "I did it for my wife," Neil said ruefully. True love should be rewarded," said the snake. Put out your hand again." The snake gave Neil a feather. "Wear it around your neck," he said, "and you will be able to understand everything that the birds say. But do not reveal the secret to anyone, or the charm will stop working." "I've learned my lesson," said Neil. "Nothing on this earth will make me tell again." The snake rattled his tail and laughed. "I told you that secrets are hard to keep, my friend. We'll see how long you last this time." And that would be the story's resolution. So we could say the ending, the snake basically kind of says, we'll see what happens next time. I don't think the snake thinks that Neil can keep these secrets at all. And if we were going to say, so when Neil says this ruefully, "I did it for my wife," said Neil ruefully. It's important to know what words mean in a text, because then we can better understand our characters. Because let's say he said this excitedly, then it would mean that he was like happy he did it. But he is sort of happy that he did it. So if we wanted to think what the word ruefully would mean. So ruefully would mean expressing sorrow, but in like a humorous way. So if you said something ruefully, you do regret it, but you're not technically like super sad or depressed about it. You're kind of saying it in a funny way. So we could say, to express regret or sadness in a humorous, funny, I'll say humorous, funny way. So he is sad, but not like terribly sad. It's not like an end of the world type way, we could say. And now we can look at our questions here. So our first question, we have, "Wear it around your neck," he whispered, "and you'll understand everything the animals say. But if you reveal your secret, the charm won't work anymore." "I won't tell anyone," Neil assured him. Which words from paragraphs 3 or 4 best help the reader understand the meaning for the word reveal? All right. So whispered would be talking softly. Understand, that would mean we knew what they were talking about. Tell, that would be to tell someone something. And assured, that means you're kind of like guaranteeing them, or you're saying like you promise you're not going to tell. All right, so now when we have the word reveal in paragraphs 3 and 4. We want to make sure we reread it. Wear it around your neck and you'll understand everything the animals say. But if you reveal your secret, the charm won't work anymore. And he says he won't tell. So this is right before he gives it to him. So we could say this is our story's exposition, the very beginning, where we meet our characters and the setting. And here we would say this is a forest type setting. All right, so now we want to know reveal. This one, I won't tell anyone. Wait, but if you reveal your secret, he already used the word whisper, but if you understand your secret, that doesn't really seem like it would be. And then we would have tell. And for this one, it would have to be tell. So we would pick C here. But if you tell your secret, the charm won't work. And we know that to be true because when he does tell the secret to his wife, the charm didn't work anymore. Why does Neil clasp his charm in paragraph 8? All right, let's go back to paragraph 8. Wait, we have he was afraid he would lose it. He could understand what the mouse was saying. He wanted to make sure the charm was still working. He could understand how the snake felt about secrets. All right, so we want to go back to 8. Now, you also here have to know what the word clasping means. So if you clasp something, you would be like holding it kind of tightly to you, like it's like it's important. All right, so we will find any in Hairbread. One mouse squeaked. Neil sat up in surprise, clasping his charm. He could understand the mouse's squeaking. All right, so if he's clasping it, we could say he's definitely not afraid he's going to lose it. He could understand what the mouse was saying. He wanted to make sure the charm was still working. He could understand how the snake felt about secrets. It can't be anything about our secrets yet. And if it says he wanted to make sure the charm was still working, that wouldn't make sense. Because this is the first time in our story that the charm actually works. So we could say the reason he was clasping it would maybe be the same reason we would clasp it. If this was happening to us, you might grab it to make sure it was real, or this would be really happening. So we could say he's surprised, so he's clasping the charm, like, wow, I can't believe this is working. How does Neil add to the problem in the story? So remember, the problem can also be viewed, we would also call that our conflict. So we have, he invites his aunt to come visit. He did do that. He laughs at what the animals say. He gives a snake tooth to his wife. He helps eat all the food in the house. All right, so for this one, we know it can't be A. Well, if we go back, so he did invite his aunt, right? Wait, did he? I have my reasons. Later that afternoon, Neil's old aunt came to visit. Technically, it doesn't say he invited her, though. So she might just usually come over, and that would be different, right? Oh, wait. But the first time that he has the laughing fit is when the mice come. And he starts laughing that the mice are going to be disappointed. And now here's really the first time that it's a problem. Because this wouldn't have been a problem at all for Neil if his wife didn't ask, right? Or he could have sort of like lied to his wife and just made something up every time he was laughing at animals. But we could say that Neil is characterized as being honest. So his honesty is stopping him from making up a lie. So here he laughs, and then he laughs. Wait, this part is when the milkman comes. So milkmen used to come to people's houses and deliver milk. And when they say the master has watered down the milk, this probably wouldn't even be funny. Well, this kind of means that the person that they're buying milk from is putting water in the milk. So It's half water, half milk. But Neil's finding this funny. And then, of course, his wife asks again why he's laughing. And then if we go down here, when his aunt comes to visit, he starts to laugh again when the cow is making fun of her. And now his wife has had it. So at that point, he gave his wife the charm, right? But we could say that his problem had already been added, right? Because that was our other answer choice here. Our other answer was, how does he add to the problem? Campy invites his aunt to visit. He laughs at what animals say. He gives the snake tooth to his wife. So we know by the time he gave it to his wife, he was already in the problem. So he adds to his problem of having to keep this secret by laughing at everything the animals say. Which paragraph best explains the powers the charm has? All right, now we have to try to remember these numbers. So we have 3, 5, 28, and 30. All right, so here we have 28. True love should be rewarded. Put your hand out again. All right, it can't be 28, right? Because he doesn't say anything. And then 30, I've learned my lesson. Nothing on earth will make me tell again. If it would have been 29, wear it around your neck and you will be able to understand everything the birds say. But do not reveal the secret to anyone. That wasn't an answer choice, paragraph 29, but paragraph 29 does explain, right? So then the other one was 3 and 5. And here we have 3. Wear it around your neck and you'll understand everything the animals say. But if you reveal your secret, the charm won't work anymore. And then 5 was, the snake flicked out his tongue. Beware. Secrets are hard to keep, my friend. That one is just about the secret, right? And the problem. So for our final question, or our question 4 here, it has to be paragraph 3. That is when they tell us what the powers the charm has. And then we have here, all right, read paragraph 31 from the story. The snake rattled his tail and laughed. I told you that secrets are hard to keep, my friend. We'll see how long you last this time. Why does the snake say this to Neil? The snake thinks the secret is funny. The snake thinks Neil won't tell someone the secret. The snake thinks Neil will tell someone the secret. The snake thinks the wife will figure out the secret. The snake thinks his friendship with Neil is more valuable than secrets. Okay, wait, for this one, we know the snake wasn't... The snake and Neil, well, I guess you could sort of say they're friends at this point. But he gives him... So the snake isn't mad that Neil told his wife. In fact, he sees it as like a reward, right? So when he said, I told you secrets are hard to keep, we'll see how long you last this time. And we know he's laughing. We could say here, the snake thinks the secret is funny. He kind of does, but it's not the secret itself. It's the fact that Neil has to keep it, right? The snake thinks Neil will tell someone the secret. This would be our answer here, right? Because the snake thinks the wife will figure it out. Technically, the snake could think that, but if his wife does figure it out, then he would have told, he has to still confirm it, right? So he would confirm it. So it matters, it only matters if Neil tells it. So his wife might figure out that he has something going on, and then Neil, being the truth teller, is obviously going to tell her the truth. And it wouldn't be D. The snake thinks his friendship with Neil is more valuable than secrets, because the snake recognized that love is more important than secrets. All right, which statement best describes a lesson learned from the story? Secrets can often be entertaining. Secrets are not very useful. Rewards should not be taken for granted. Rewards can be more trouble than they're worth. And this one is a tricky one. All right, so for this one, we would have, now, secrets can be entertaining. The secret was entertaining, right?
That's not nice.
But we would want this to be a lesson. So when you're looking for the question, the answer choice that is a lesson, you want it to kind of have almost like two parts. So for this, if you notice, secrets can be entertaining. There's no kind of like but, or there's no if or like lesson to it. You don't learn a lesson from an entertaining secret. Secrets are not very useful. In this case, the secret in the story was useful because he figured out that his house had mice. He figured out that the milkman was scamming people. So we could say the secret of being able to know what animals are thinking is a useful secret. Rewards should not be taken for granted. So for this one, did Neil take this reward for granted? And we do know that when his wife finally was going to leave, so he had 3 times his wife was mad, but then on the 3rd time he had to tell. And he was sad about it. And the snake did say, if it was over true love, then it was okay. So technically he didn't take it for granted because he had to kind of tell his wife because he couldn't stop laughing. So for this one, and if we remember from the very beginning of the story, because you might also be thinking, what the heck was a reward? But this originally was a story about a reward. So he had pulled the rocks off the magic snake, and then the snake gave him the tooth. So it was a reward that he had to deal with here. So we can say rewards can be more trouble than they are worth. Because in this case, he got this reward that he could hear the animals, but then it caused this 3 arguments with his wife, and they kind of almost broke up. So we could say it is definitely answer choice D. And this would be our multiple choice questions for our folktale / fable, Secrets Are Hard to Keep.